Le bombo clat, you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
I don't even know how I want to start this, man. The Apex is such a special place. It really is, dude. It makes me feel. Nothing quite makes me feel the way the Apex cards do. Other than these big events, because, I mean, I usually end up leaving inspired as a result of watching events like UFC 300 or events like, hopefully, UFC 322 next week, which I'm about to have a crazy amount of breakdowns coming through the pipeline all throughout this week in preparation for. So please do like, comment, and subscribe to make sure you're not missing any of that stuff. But whenever it comes to about sheer emotions that I feel while watching the UFC, nothing quite triumphs these Apex cards as far as getting me to laugh, cry, want to fucking vomit all over my gaming setup. The Apex always does it for me, dude. So we're going to talk about it, man. Randy Brown, he did not win against Gabriel Bonfim. And if you want to ask me if it was close, no. It was not close. Randy Brown, dare I say, got farted on. And it was bad. It was bad. And the funniest thing was I was talking with this dude at the very end of my live. Shout out my boy Anakin Sky MMA. We were talking about it. Why is it not possible for Randy Brown to just get, like, chinned in a non-funny way? It always looks like the freaking Hoopla dude from SpongeBob, like getting conked over the head with a brick whenever he does go to sleep. It's always the most cartoonish visual whenever Randy Brown gets put to bed. It's never just like a knockout. It's like one of the funniest ones you've ever seen in your life. And it would just insult to injury with the way that this fight was going. This man, we're going to talk about it right now. Let's just talk about it. The Ghost of Kazama in the Apex is like a horseman of death. And he rained on our parade tonight. We had the death of prospects. I mean, pretty much that's it. A bunch of prospects ended up getting just ruined by dudes who they were supposed to supersede or who I thought they would supersede in their fights tonight. We're going to break it down one by one, but man, this is all your fault. You did this. My boy Randall came out 6'3" for this weight class. Gabriel Bonfim came out looking a little bit doe-eyed. And I was like, this might be a cheeky KO. Before the fight even gets going, we're going to be scooping Gabriel Bonfim's guts off of the canvas. And Gabriel Bonfim immediately locked in. He definitely was working with Vicente Luque to come up with a game plan that would result in him beating Randy Brown. Randy Brown was getting his legs chopped at the early going of this fight. My dog looked like Mingyang Zhang out there. He's getting his lead leg chewed up by Gabriel Bonfim. He didn't check a single low kick. Not even one. Throughout one round, Gabriel Bonfim lands 20 calf kicks on Randy Brown, which completely stifled his movement, got him switching stances, walking all weird. This man, Gabriel Bonfim, didn't even wrestle once throughout this entire fight before he actually got a TKO over Randy Brown. The jiu-jitsu guy gets a knockout over the striker. Randy Brown, it's not even like he wasn't playing to his advantages too at any point in the fight. He was creating phone booth 50-50 exchanges with Gabriel Bonfim, but he just was so ineffective in accomplishing anything in these sequences. I had to watch the window of Randy Brown being able to secure this brutal KO get smaller and smaller in like 3 pocket exchanges until it was completely non-existent. Randy Brown was landing some pretty nice hooks on the inside. He was getting some solid lands in on Gabriel Bonfim, but that's not to say that Gabriel Bonfim wasn't answering back with like his own hard shots while they were chest to chest. And whenever that space was created again, Randy Brown was just getting his leg chopped at. Joe Rogan would have been creaming at the tip at this performance of Gabriel Bonfim. Brown makes it back to his corner, looks completely defeated on the stool, gets up, comes out. They do a little bit more pocket exchanging, and one clash that they do have results in Gabriel Bonfim getting into a Muay Thai clinch with Randy Brown. He ends up ripping this knee up the middle, and it catches Randy Brown right on his chin, producing one of the most visually confusing knockouts to watch in real time of the entirety of this year. The reason why is because Gabriel Bonfim slips, and Randy Brown also falls backwards too. But Gabriel Bonfim just lost his footing, and Randy Brown actually got flash KO'd by this strike. And And before I watched it back on the tape, I did want to say that this was an early stoppage. But if you could watch that back in slow motion and still say that it was an early stoppage, you might just have it out for Randy Brown and want to see him take as much damage as humanly possible in the MMA octagon because you don't like him or something, dude. Because there was no way that he was actually going to get back into the fight after taking that type of damage. Gabriel Bonfim was a grappler after all. It didn't show any shade of that in this fight prior to getting this drop, and he would have been on Randy Brown like ugly on Yo Mama. Granted, that fight was not stopped whenever it was. Bonfim wins this fight via round 2 TKO. And it wasn't even like a TKO, dude. I'm using that term sparingly. There was no follow-up shots. It was a KO. It was a walk-off KO. Gabriel Bonfim falls. Randy Brown falls. Bonfim gets up. Randy Brown gets up a little bit slower. Mark Smith waves off the fight. So, I mean, like, we just kind of got to live with that now. Bonfim is on a title run. This kind of legitimizes him as a contender in this weight class. There's a bunch of different things that you could do with Gabriel Bonfim. Next week, we're going to have some contenders who will inevitably lose fights because there's going to be 3 huge welterweight matchups happening. Gabriel Bonfim is not going to be fighting with the loser of Islam Makhachev versus Jack Della Maddalena, obviously, but as far as who wins or loses between like Michael Morales and Sean Brady and then Leon Edwards and Carlos Prates, it's kind of up in the air. I saw a guy in the chat talk about he'd be interested in seeing Gabriel Bonfim fight with Michael Morales in the event that he loses to Sean Brady. I kind of feel the same way. Joaquin Buckley doesn't really have anything in the pipeline right now, so this could also be something that you do since Gabriel Bonfim ranked at number 14, having beaten Randy Brown the way that he did. Likely gets closer to like number 12, potentially, maybe even like 11, right outside of the top 10. Joaquin Buckley is like number 7, so 4 spots away, it makes sense. You could make this fight. Gabriel Bonfim is like an actual contender at 170 now. And he finished Randy Brown with a cartoonishly funny knockout. So, yeah, we watched that happen. God, I love this sport just as much as I absolutely hate it. We're going to talk more about this roller coaster of emotions that we were put through throughout this card. Matt Schnell versus Joseph Morales. I mean, dude, Matt Schnell in 2025, bro. Matt Schnell in 2025. That's all you really needed to know. If you're a ball knower and like, I'm actually going to like not go too hard on people who picked Matt Schnell because my boy Lego Darth Maul was in the chat talking about he actually did have Matt Schnell winning this fight. I mean, he does show shades of being good at striking sometimes, but it's up against guys who leave themselves vulnerable to getting tagged. He could have won against Cody Durden, but I mean, I could have graduated valedictorian and went Ivy League, so I mean, there's that too. Joseph Morales, very underrated jiu-jitsu, and people are getting hip to it now. This guy is about as slick of a practitioner of Brazilian jiu-jitsu that exists in this weight class. It's like Tyra level, and people aren't going to give it the praise that it deserves, or maybe they are, but dude, this guy is like, his setups are so high level. And that's not even to like slight his striking too, because he was giving competitive exchanges with Matt Schnell on the feet. I mean, yeah, it's Matt Schnell in 2025, but for what it's worth, Matt Schnell was the first one to initiate the grappling between the two of these guys because he was feeling the pressure in the stand-up. Joseph Morales lands a cheeky high kick on Matt Schnell, gets this man shooting. He elevates some butterfly hooks, gets to a sweep. Schnell is standing over Morales. Morales uses his grip on the back of Matt Schnell's ankles to trip him and then stand up into top positions. Floats right into side control. Matt Schnell, he's like wriggling to try to re-guard. Joseph Morales attacks a Kimura like no problem. Uses the Kimura to transition into a crucifix. By the time that Matt Schnell is trying to turn into Joseph Morales to escape this position, he's getting guillotined. And that's just all she wrote. Super tight squeeze on Joseph Morales. Good gym as well. Comes from Team Alpha Male. We did get to see that boy Uriah Faber there. Puts on for his home city of Sacramento. Shouted out that place. Said that he wants to have a card there sooner rather than later. Shouted out Andre Feely in the crowd as well. Another Sacramento boy. So not really much to tell here. Joseph Morales does get deserved exposure from being on this position in the card and putting on a performance like that. There was actually a lot of cool finishes on this event. Joseph Morales is a guy who I heavily underrated in the tough finale against that Kazakh guy just because, I mean, the dude had like a knight helmet on. He looked like he was out of the game Chivalry 2. I mean, like, I thought that guy had it. But Joseph Morales stopped him the same way he stopped Matt Schnell in the first round of this fight. This was the beginning of the heartbreak. I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. I'm working on a video, and it's going to be titled Fighters Who I Always Swear are Cooked, basically, but they never are. I need to revamp the title, because, I mean, that doesn't really roll off the tongue that well. But I was going to put Muslim Salikhov on this list, because every single time that I'm like, Song Kenan had a competitive striking match with Ian Gary and even dropped him in one fight, that means by relation, he's going to have an easy time knocking out a 40-year-old Muslim Salikhov. Or Carlos Leal displayed a really nice skill set against Rinat Fakhretdinov. Could have arguably won the fight depending on how the judges were feeling and scoring it whenever they did fight. He has no problem beating a 40-year-old Muslim Salikhov, 41-year-old Muslim Salikhov, right? No. Muslim Salikhov is a dude who stops these guys who seem to be surging after getting a couple of good performances, maybe a highlight KO over a guy who's not that good. They think that they could just keep the momentum going through Muslim Salikhov, who would be an easy out on the basis of what you see on paper, but he stops him. I thought that this would be no different. Muslim Salikhov did get absolutely torched by Uros Medic. It made me sad. It made me real sad. Salikhov didn't even get the chance to lock in. Uros Medic came out. There was switch stance. Uros Medic, he threw a high kick over the guard of Muslim Salikhov, glanced over his head. They traded kicks. Salikhov takes a step back and starts moving backwards. And that's indicating that he's sensing this shift in momentum that's favoring Uros Medic. Uros Medic throws a godly straight punch down the pipe. It knocks Muslim Salikhov down. He attacks Muslim Salikhov immediately while he shells. The ref doesn't let it go on for very long. My unk got shadow realmed, and I feel bad about it. This honestly kind of puts a nail in the coffin as far as the 41-year-old gatekeeper goes. We definitely saw this guy get slept out by Randy Brown not too long ago, but I was at least whenever he was 2 years younger. This guy's 41, dude. He shouldn't be taking those types of spills. Imagine if that was your unk, bro, and you're watching him just getting wabbled like this. That wouldn't make me feel good one bit. I like Uros Medic. He's a cool guy. I mean, he's a pretty humble fellow as well. I remember he gave a good talk to the audience whenever he had gotten his last finish over Gilbert Urbina. Same thing here, talking about how he's just always been a dude who just fights. And he has performances where he loses sometimes, but he's human. Whenever he does win, it's always an emphatic W. And he's right about that. So, I mean, credit where credit's due. Very good performance out of him over a guy who's no pushover. Muslim Salikhov, man. My heart breaks for you, brother. It really does. I'm sad. I'm sad thinking about Muslim Salikhov getting smoked like that. It doesn't make me feel nice. This made me feel a little bit better. Because, I mean, dude, I was not doing too hot. On the main card, I was actually not doing too well, dude. To get us going, oh my god, we're going to talk. I don't even want to mention it until we're there, bro. Marco Tulio versus Christian Leroy Duncan. I'll never believe in anything ever again, dude. Everything is fake, dude. Love isn't real. Oh my god, man. Oh, no. I can't fall apart yet, dude. We got to get there first. Ismael Bonfim versus Chris Padilla. I was feeling so bad going into this fight because of what we had just got done watching. And I thought that we were going to have to watch Ismael Bonfim beat Chris Padilla, making me 0 for 2 on my predictions on this main card and sending me one step closer to doing a swanton bomb outside of that second story window of my bedroom. Ismael Bonfim missed weight by 5 pounds, right? And this wasn't a weight miss where it was he's really badly messed up because he did a math error and he drained all he could and that last 5 pounds just won't come off and he looks really bad on the scales. This dude looked fit as a fiddle on the scales. In much better shape than Chris Padilla did by comparison because he actually made the weight. And so in turn, he was hitting a lot harder than Chris Padilla too. And Chris Padilla came out the same way that I saw in the fight against Rongju, high guard, taking a lot of shots, which made me nervous because Ismael Bonfim was working a varied approach with his boxing, 50-50 comboing, ripping the body to shreds against Chris Padilla since his guard was so high, landing hooks in close right under the elbows of Chris Padilla, touching both sides of the body, coming up high, landing his shots through the guard of Chris Padilla, cutting him even, Chris Padilla was just pumping out a leg kick and then just trying to gauge the distance so he could throw the step and elbow, which he was missing with throughout the entirety of the first round. Me and one of my dogs, Soleil, were in the chat talking about, like, so is that it? Chris Padilla just has no striking? Is that, like, is that it? But little did we know how Chris Padilla was going to lock in come round two. He came out looking the same way that he did on the feet in the first round, high guard, lots of pressure though. Ismael Bonfim and Chris Padilla were like crashing into each other. And what we saw happen was Ismael Bonfim lose a lot of momentum by not eliciting the type of reactions that he thought he would have gotten out of flush lands against Chris Padilla. And then Chris Padilla ended up pushing him back into the cage. Chris Padilla was able to get into the clinch so that he could stand chest to chest with Ismael Bonfim and zero in his elbows to land at point blank range, and he ended up catching Ismael Bonfim on the temple of his head, which flash KO'd him. And he tried to readjust him in the clinch, and whenever he tried to move him off of the cage, Ismael Bonfim, in a disoriented state, fell, and he could not defend himself anymore. It was like he was definitely messed up whenever he was on the ground. He was trying to play guard, and Chris Padilla was able to just swing right through it. And Ismael Bonfim only had enough energy at this point to turtle up. And so that's how he was finished in this fight. Chris Padilla landed a blessed elbow, and he was losing this entire fight until he wasn't losing anymore. And then he won, which was pretty spectacular. Yeah, Padilla scores a round 2 TKO in this fight, and it was pretty cool. I wish that both Bonfim brothers could have lost. Oh my god. That would have made me as happy as it would have made me correct in my predictions. But now we're going to talk about the thing that really shattered my heart.
Society, you had a chance to fix me. Instead of fixing me, you broke me! You broke me! Wow!
Every time, bro, every time I believe, it's always this. It's always this. It's always this. It's always this. Of course, Duncan would choose this matchup against, like, this prospect that I believe is going to absolutely turn this division over on its head to have a career performance. And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about Marco Tulio as far as what I hope for him to accomplish and how he fell short in this matchup. But that we should not undermine what type of fighter Cristian Leroy Duncan displayed that he is in this fight, because that deserves more notice. Cristian Leroy Duncan finished his last fight by a spinning elbow against Eric Anders, and what was a pretty enthralling performance. After we saw time and time again Cristian Leroy Duncan get into these fights where he seems a bit gun shy and like not able to really hone his distance and his range at which he's most effective in, had none of those problems against Marco Tulio tonight. Marco Tulio was allowing himself to get outmanned by Cristian Leroy Duncan. Pressured into each corner of the cage, didn't stand his ground whatsoever at any point in this fight. He allowed Certified Lover Duncan to completely dictate the pacing and where this fight took place. It was always Marco Tulio on the back foot. It was always him anticipating a huge strike that was going to inevitably land, but he just didn't know what form that it was going to come in. And it was always like a spinning attack, dude. The very beginning of this fight, Marco Tulio got spinning elbowed right in the middle of his brow, and it created a ridge right in his T-zone, dude. Like, that's going to scar. It's going to be nasty, too. Huge contusion right there. Definitely didn't come to until maybe halfway through the first round because he was getting just pinned down in the clinch. Bleeding all over Cristian Leroy Duncan, too. Duncan displayed this ability to manipulate a fighter who's very dynamic in the clinch, which, I mean, he has shown this on some other occasions in different fights. And even though it's like 6 foot to 6'2" there, Marco Tulio looked so much smaller than Cristian Leroy Duncan. Duncan looked absolutely massive standing next to Tulio. It was like a man playing with his baby son, dude. It was quite magnificent, because not only was Cristian Leroy Duncan throwing unorthodox strikes, he spun about 8 different times in this fight. Dog looked like a Beyblade out there. He was fighting long, and that's the important thing here. At range, he was piecing up Marco Tulio and further compounding his damage. And as far as like distance gauging with the spinning strikes, dude he's got that figured out at least. Marco Tulio threw a leg kick while backing up and caught a nasty back fist that like made his legs like he was chicken dancing out there. And it made me sad because I knew he was out on his feet, and all Christian Leroy Duncan had to do was follow up with like maybe 1 or 2 combos, which he did, and he completely put out my boy Marco Tulio. And then he gave him a super necessary shot on the ground to follow up the drop. And like the dude, he was like keister up in the air. This was bad. He left my boy Marco Tulio stanky in front. Like, oh my god, this was bad. This was bad. Horrible stuff, man. Like actually like horrible. But Christian Leroy Duncan, another tale to tell here is the fact that his grappling looks so sharp. Marco Tulio is no slouch in terms of like the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu as well. He just got reversed in every single grappling exchange that they had gotten into. Christian Leroy Duncan was able to swim his way to a dominant position. Or if they were competing for like a whizzer hook, Christian Leroy Duncan was able to like invert where the momentum was going. So like he'd always end up in a better position than Marco Tulio whenever he was the one who would initiate the grappling sequences out of just panic. And this comes with Christian Leroy Duncan unlocking more ability to command his frame. And that is a problem for every single other middleweight. I think that for all intents and purposes, everything that I thought that Marco Tulio would accomplish in this division, Christian Leroy Duncan is now in the driver's seat to do those same things. Which, I mean, I'm jumping ship here, bro, is what I'm trying to say. Christian Leroy Duncan, I had said before that Marco Tulio was one of the best prospects out of 185. It's Christian Leroy Duncan. No doubt. This man is like, he's him. He's him. Anakin Sky MMA was talking about it as well. Dog kind of like middleweight John Jones-esque. The way that like unorthodox striking techniques, insane dominance and knowledge of grappling positions, and this ability to fight with his range and not counterintuitively engage in wars of attrition with guys who don't have as large of a skeleton as he does. So I think that if he can stick to this, the sky is the limit. This guy potentially poses more danger to this division than like a Tiba Gautier. If all Tiba Gautier has is raw physicality and it's not adapted, Christian Leroy Duncan could potentially beat that guy. So, I mean, I'll be tracking this year's progression through the division because I think that he is really all that. Which, I mean, if you would have asked me 2 fights ago, I would have said no way. And that Christian Leroy Duncan is a gun-shy fodder fighter for this weight class who looks really scary but isn't really about anything because he is just not willing to pull the trigger. He's got the instincts, man. He definitely, he's wised up to the fact that he is who he is. And he's going to make a run now. So we have to get ready for that. Rest in peace, Marco Tulio, man. Oh my god. Oh my god. No, no. Oh no! Now we're on to the prelims. After I watched Marco Tulio get chinned in the second round of that fight, I felt like Chet Hanks, bro. Miguan take me on life. Oh, bomba clutch. Miguan take me on life, brother. All I really have to say is Balende. This was a freaking sweet fight, bro. Ricky Simón versus Raoni Barcelos. A true Apex classic between 2 members of the bantamweight division. 2 senior members of the bantamweight division. We could talk about Ricky Simón being 5 years younger than Raoni Barcelos, but he's been around, man, for a long while. This is a very historical fighter for this division. Has potentially even more fights in the UFC than that boy Raoni Barcelos, but that's not the story here, who has more experience. The story is the skills that they displayed here relative to the fighters that we know them as. Ricky Simón is a grappler through and through. A wrestler, boxer, hybrid, and he's just going to get in there and throw some overhands, right? Maybe land some like lead hooks that are nasty, integrate the takedown into his game plan. Raoni Barcelos, kind of like the same thing, maybe a little bit less boxing heavy in his last matchup since he's been given really dynamic strikers to fight. He's been clinging to his wrestling to get wins. But what happens whenever you completely eliminate grappling as a wrinkle of both of these fighters' games and then lock them into a cage with each other? You have a boxing match, which was weird. I didn't think that it would be so boxing heavy. This was a crazy fight, dude. Ricky Simón came out, moving his head amazingly. He was timing this right hand by Raoni Barcelos, getting right under it. It was a game of inches the entire time. Ricky Simón was firing his own offense. Raoni Barcelos was moving really well in the pocket too. But Raoni Barcelos, like, God, his boxing is really good, dude. He was firing like 4 or 5 punch combinations on Ricky Simón. Nothing with like extremely high power, just things that were meant to touch. And Raoni Barcelos came out with a more dominant jab than Ricky Simón. Ricky Simón was trying to land the bigger shots, and he was really punching himself out, trying to get on the inside and separate Raoni Barcelos from his donkey. It was never really going to go that way after the first couple of exchanges because they didn't really need a feeling out process to get a beat on each other's timing. If anything, Ricky Simón was getting stung by this like right uppercut that Raoni Barcelos kept on going back to the well and throwing. And the momentum shift favored Raoni Barcelos a little bit more even after he started accruing damage with his jab on Ricky Simón. And he was able to time his takedowns the same way that he was timing this rear uppercut in order to score, just points, right? He wasn't getting any meaningful control out of wrestling Ricky Simón because they were able to scramble and get back up to the feet where they would just continue to box with each other. But Raoni Barcelos looked like the more experienced wrestler in terms of being able to shoot at the right time and to not force the grappling sequences at a time where Ricky Simón was prepared to defend. And that was able to help him get like really free takedowns that were just netting him points on the cards. And also the better and more patient boxer in terms of setting up his combinations with the jab, starting his combinations with the jab, jabbing out of range, landing good shots where he could land them, and not really doing too much in terms of like trying to produce a finish. Like less is really more in these types of fights because they're not the highest level boxers, but they're both serviceable with the hands, and that was evidence enough. Ricky Simón was trying to over rely on his power to produce this highlight reel KO that he got over Javid Basharat. Raoni Barcelos was just touching, throwing the jab out there, scoring with the jab, right hand behind it, maybe another jab and then a right hand behind it, and that's like a 5-punch string that he was able to get like at least 3 solid connections out of. And that was what was repeating throughout these 3 rounds. Ricky Simón lost this fight via unanimous decision to Raoni Barcelos, who clearly won it over Ricky Simón. It was like Ultra Instinct Barcelos, though. He had the output, which was at an incredible pace, and then his head movement. He was timing all the offense of Ricky Simón, who was throwing like maybe 1 punch per 2 shots that Raoni Barcelos was returning to him. There's something to be said about how good the hands of Raoni Barcelos are, though. I don't think that he was that far behind fighters like Peyton Talbot or like Cody Garbrandt in terms of the stand-up that we had assumed him to be, since he did rely more on the wrestling in those fights. But dude, I was thoroughly impressed by the display of striking on both sides. This was an Apex Classic. The matchmakers absolutely fried with this one. Raoni Barcelos wins the decision. Umar Nurmagomedov looks like an absolute baller post this fight. This was another really good one here. Hyder Amil versus Jamaal Emmers. Alright, so it's like, Hyder Amil is good, right? He's good. But you can weaponize his fighting style against him to the point where it's like he kind of digs himself into a hole where he's outputting all of this volume, but it's not really getting him anywhere, and it's just exhausting him. If you don't let Hyder Amil start the fight, pressuring you into the cage to land his combinations, then he kind of doesn't really know what to do because he's not very good at fighting backwards. Jamaal Emmers, even with his like 0.5 speed punches, was able to time openings to be able to score on Hyder Amil, and he was getting some pretty flush lands in the early going of this fight. And then he was chaining these lands into takedowns where Hyder Amil was having to work to get up to a neutral position onto the cage where he could try to like angle off, and then Jamaal Emmers would capture him there in these positions in a Muay Thai clinch for a little bit longer to get just a bit more damage off, and he would just chip in at him. And the whole time Hyder Amil was just trying to force the action and get himself back into the fight by just throwing a hail of punches at Jamaal Emmers and trying to drown him in those, and it just wasn't working. So what we saw was Hyder Amil kind of frustrate himself with his pacing, which was, dare I say, even like a little bit too high in the first round, and it made him exhausted going into the second, where he had no problem scrambling out of the takedown attempts of Jamaal Emmers in the first, even though he might have ended that round on his back. Jamaal Emmers got the first takedown in the second round, and then we saw the work rate of Hyder Amil drastically reduced. And by the end of this fight, this dude was like collapsing in the octagon on the basis of how tired he was. Jamaal Emmers came out with an amazing game plan, though. Emmers is a far better wrestler than I thought he was. Like, his wrestling is actually, like, very good for this weight class. This is definitely going to help him, like, move this way up the division, too, since Hyder Amil does have a win over William Gomes and was undefeated all the way up until he had fought with Jose Delgado. So now that Jamaal Emmers is beating this dude, there's definitely going to be some fights for him. like some good fights for him to take too that could have ranked implications if he does continue to win. I met this dude at my combat gym, and I just thought, like, Nate the Train. I was just so hung up on the Nate the Train fight, dude, that I just didn't see this going any other way except for Hyder Amil just blistering this guy with the furious pace and then scoring like a mid to late round like TKO on him. Maybe even an early one. But Jamaal Emmers, he didn't go out like a Mark Sucka in this fight. He stood his ground and he took the fight to Hyder Amil, and Hyder Amil was the one who broke. So, I mean, good on him. He didn't even seem to be too fatigued towards the end of this as well for all the grappling that he was doing. Just pure control out of Jamaal Emmers. And all that control time resulted in him getting a feel for the stand-up too and being able to dictate the pacing of the stand-up, since Hyder Amil just didn't have the gas to continue on the pace that he was outputting at the very beginning of the fight. And then that led to Emmers just completely taking over. So good on him. He wins this decision very handedly. I don't know, man. Hyder Amil, he has a lot of raw ability and a lot of physical gifts, but he just needs to, like, focus him. I don't think that he's done, but this definitely, like, leaves some questions about where he does go from here, how he gets back on track from this fight, which, I mean, I don't know, man. Kind of felt like a layup on paper. Good for Jamaal Emmers. Alright, man, I'm not going to talk very much about either of these WMMA fights because I got them right as far as my predictions went. They were decisions that were absolutely brutal to sit through, dude. I think that I would rather endure 1 hour of Chinese water torture than to watch another WMMA fight on the prelims of one of these Apex cards, or one of the fight nights in general, dude. It doesn't even need to be an Apex card. This was so bad. I mean, Jaqueline Cavalcanti, she did what she had to do to win. And I mean, she beat the crap out of Mayra Bueno too. And that's going to do a lot for her in terms of, like, placement in this division, as far as being able to get matchups up the rankings so that she can get closer to a title shot. But, dude, if we're talking women's bantamweight and the fight doesn't involve Kayla Harrison, do you really care? Because I don't. And I don't think that I can care. Because this fight was just so bad. And it was so hard to watch. I'm so sick of seeing Mayra Bueno in, like, these high-profile matchups, too. If she's ranked, and you're a woman watching who's around 150 pounds, and, like, how tall? Maybe, like, 5'6" to 5'8", dude. Maybe 5'9". And you feel like you could make 135, go join the combat gym. It's free money. I mean, you could be an OF model, but if you wanted to take a more honorable pathway, this is always here for you. Because the bar of entry is literally so low. You can be profitable in doing this. Like, if that's a career path that you want for yourself, I like, do it or something. Cavalcanti wins this decision, and, like, bro, after I get done with this VOD and editing, I'm down to blackout so I can forget this fight. Josh Hokit versus Max Gimenis. I mean, bro, say what you want about Hokit. He's skilled. And I think that he did a good job here. He did what he was supposed to up against this jiu-jitsu guy at heavyweight. Who, again, if you're picking jiu-jitsu guys at heavyweight, how many times are we going to have to teach you this lesson, old man? Like old man Jenkins standing in the road. Oh, I love the young people. I'm going to predict the jiu-jitsu guy wins against the wrestler. It doesn't even matter if Josh Hokit is like a diet heavyweight, bro. He beasted and feasted this noob, Max Gimenis. And it wasn't even close, dude. Gimenis got absolutely sparked in no time. Josh Hokit is aggressive, and he went for it. That's all you really got to do if you are a guy who is lighter than 250 pounds in this weight class. Even if you are a blob and you're fighting at the lower rungs of heavyweight, all you got to do is just put your foot on the gas and go for a finish as soon as the fight starts. And you're probably going to get somewhere nice. Likely next to the ref with your hand raised. But specific for Josh Hokit's skill set, he can finish a lot of different fights with the boxing because he is faster than his ops. Max Gimenis was getting dropped, allowed to recover it, and then dropped one more time before he even had the opportunity to react in any capacity because of the speed differential between him and Josh Hokit. The problem is whenever you are Josh Hokit's frame and you let the other guy work any type of grappling or maybe like a low kick to get the fight going. Josh Hokit did absorb one low kick at the very beginning of this fight, and it kind of threw him off as well. It made him turn around, but I mean, dude, he smelled blood afterwards and he got the finish. So there's really not anything that I could say about this. He wants to fight with Walter Walker. He made that call out. And I mean, with a performance like that, it's hard to really turn him down because this guy is marketable. He didn't come out with like as much political rigmarole in his post fight, but it was a funny promo that he cut. It was a lot like Chael Sonnen talking about like the German chocolate cake or whatever. He said something about like grandma's apple pie or something. And then he said, Walter Walker, I think you absolutely suck. And then he just walked off. It was cool. Cool little mic drop moment. Got his knockout. It was cheeky. Max Jimenez, we're never going to hear about this guy ever again. Roster Watch is going to update their status and say that this man got dropped off of a 5-story building. And that'll be tomorrow. So, congrats, Hokit. You didn't go out sad today. I honestly just want to move right through this too. This fight was like painstakingly awful to watch, bro. Denise Gomes, dude, like, I mean, she looks like she hits hard, but whenever we're dealing in terms of like women's strawweight, none of them do. So hard to have one-shot KO power, and like being able to get knockouts over women in this weight class is down to, yes, you have to have some capacity to like pack a punch in your shots, but it's down to like the bad striking defense of the girls that you fight. If it is a tenured veteran like Tecia Pennington, you can pretty much rip overhands at this girl all day and she's not going to get knocked out. And Denise Gomes was testing that theory in this fight. She was controlling the clinch exchanges. She wasn't getting wrestled by Tecia Pennington, reversing the positions whenever she was getting takedowns attempted on her. She was able to sprawl, or she was able to stuff the shots. Tecia Pennington accomplished nothing in terms of the boxing. Denise Gomes landed the better shots, and that's pretty much all we can really tell about this because nothing else went down. It was just minus 0.5 HP, minus 0.25 HP, minus 0.5 HP for 15 minutes, and then the fight was over, and Denise Gomes won. So, I mean, literally every woman's strawweight fight ever. Miles Johns versus Daniel Marcos was the second fight on this card at flyweight. So it's like, this fight looked like it was going to be better than JDM versus Islam at the very beginning whenever they were doing the introductions because they met at the center of the cage. There was a lot of intensity between both of these fighters. And then Miles Johns honestly just got packed up, and it wasn't really close at all. Daniel Marcos was able to get a beat on the timing of Miles Johns as far as entries for the wrestling and the boxing were going with a leg kick, and that stifled his movement in the early going of this one. Miles Johns was unable to wrestle because Daniel Marcos beat him to the punch. There was a sweep that was completed by Daniel Marcos over Johns, and like, Daniel Marcos got like a considerable amount of control time over Miles Johns in the first couple of minutes of this fight. And it kind of set the precedence that no matter what, Miles Johns was not going to be able to control Daniel Marcos or prevent himself from getting reversed and controlled himself. So that was like his path to victory out of the window. So Miles Johns was like, all right, so I guess I'll just clinch now because, I mean, that seems like it would make the most sense since wrestling won't work. And he was able to get like some stalling of the action through this, but he was making the fight suck. And Daniel Marcos was able to move off of the clinch, reverse the positions, and outmuscle Miles Johns there too. In the stand-up, Miles Johns was not throwing combos, it was just single overhands. Daniel Marcos was very front-leaning to try to stop and shuck off the takedown attempts of Miles Johns in the early going of the fight. But once he realized that the grappling was really no threat, he stood straight up and then just started working his kickboxing. And that was effective in whittling down Miles Johns. And whenever he saw openings to get to a body lock or some type of wrestling attempt, he was able to do that, pushing Miles Johns up against the cage. Miles Johns was using the cage to get up, building his base there, giving his back to Daniel Marcos as well. Daniel Marcos lands a trip on the cage while taking the back of Miles Johns, wraps in a rear naked choke real quick, and then he got a sub in the second round of this fight. And Miles Johns like went out completely because like he didn't tap. And that was pretty cool because it had been a long time since we saw a fighter just like refuse to tap and go to sleep. So, I mean, that was pretty lit, but Daniel Marcos bounces back from his first loss to Montel Jackson, and this was honestly one of the better fights of the night, if I could be honest. This was a funny one to get us going. Jackson Mcvey versus Zachary Reese at middleweight. Zachary Reese, like, I don't know why he does the things that he does in terms of like defense at the very beginning of fights. It almost seems like he needs to take, there's different fighters that are like this, bro. They have to take like a crazy amount of damage in positions that don't favor their fighting style in order to like activate so that they can actually start doing stuff and being effective in the cage. And Jackson Mcvey, he has no boxing. And his only abilities to do damage to fighters is to grind them out in the clinch. And Zachary Reese was just accepting these positions without level changing, without trying to create space so he can get back on the kickboxing where he was having success. And he almost got finished by Jackson Mcvey at the early going of this fight. And then the ghost of Dumas came in, the right ball of Dumas, his ghost came into the cage. And it took the form of a knee that Jackson Mcvey actually landed on Zachary Reese's ball. And then he was able to take some time to get his ducks in a row. Whenever they resumed the action, Zachary Reese tuned up Jackson Mcvey in the stand-up. He realized that he didn't shoot a single takedown all fight, so he changed levels, got a takedown, butter smooth. The first round ends, he's looking a little bit better. The second round begins. The first thing that Zachary Reese does is shoot a takedown on Jackson Mcvey. He gets the takedown, smashes through the guard of the Moose, ends up getting to an RNC whenever Jackson Mcvey tries to build a base in Turtle. Mcvey is tapping in no time. This was a round 2 sub, but it was actually really sketchy for Zachary Reese to get this finish. It was a good way for him to bounce back. I'm not sure what they do with Jackson Mcvey at this point. I mean, the dude seems to be like a cursed fighter. This dude can never maintain a matchup as it's been scheduled. He's always got his opponent pulling out. He has to take a short notice replacement. The short notice guy beats him. They'll probably give him another chance to prove himself, but this guy doesn't really seem to have like a crazy high level of skills, if any, in the cage. Like, this guy can't do stand-up. His grappling isn't all there, and all there is like being nice. The only way that he can really win a fight is to have a boring one in the clinch where he's just like stinking it up. So, I mean, it was a pretty cool card. We're going to talk about my predictions right now and recap everything. The real prize is going to be next week, watching Jack Della Maddalena fight with Islam Makhachev. I am going, like I said before, I'm going to be giving you guys some really nice breakdowns of all the different fights that are going to be happening on that card. So please do stay tuned for that. I went, 7-5 this week. 12 fight card, 7-5. Those are not bad numbers, if I do say so myself. I think I could have done a little bit better, but I mean, who cares? It's not about being right all the time. It's about storylines, bro. It's about putting our faith into prospects that we want to see flourish, like Marco Tulio. It's about the highs and lows, man. So thank you guys, everybody who came to chill out on stream with me. Keep eyes peeled for updates in the coming days. I have a bunch of content planned, you guys, so do leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you made it to this point in the video. I'm going to catch you boys in the next one. Peace out.